This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Okay, so thank you everybody for listening to the Amner Martinez podcast. This past week, I had the honor to speak with Dr. Guevara, Dr. Carlos Alarcon, a student, Arthur Santos, and Dr. Diego Marquez. They're part of the Latino National Physician Day. If you go to the NLPD.com, it'll give you the information. It's an organization that started in California. It's their second year. And these Latino doctors are getting together to be part of the movement to encourage young Latinos from the grade school until high school or college, to encourage them to become doctors and pursue the medical field. So we went into great detail of their experience and how they became doctors and why they're doctors and the struggles and the different paths and ways that one can become a doctor. And they gave us some really insightful information on the misconceptions. For example, that one has to be a student throughout their entire life in order to become a doctor. That's wrong, they said. So that and many more things. So hopefully you enjoy it. Please share this podcast. It's very important. And hopefully you enjoy it. Comment, share it, and we'll see you on the next episode. But take a listen to Latino Heritage Month and the annual National Latino Physician Day on the Amner Martinez podcast. If I write questions, I'll be very robotic. I'll be like, and then, and then like, so.
We say, como vaya viniendo, vamos viendo.
So thank you for joining me. So I guess we can just kind of start with your name and your title, and then we can go from there. So we can start with you, Dr. Alarcón.
Ok, muchas gracias. Mi nombre es Carlos Alarcón. Soy médico de medicina familiar en el Mercy One Urbandale. Uh-huh. También desempeño como el director médico del Departamento de Salud del Condado de Polk. Uh-huh. En este momento, esos son mis dos mayores trabajos que estoy haciendo ahorita.
Okay. ¿Y Dr. Guevara?
Mi nombre es Dr. María Alejandra Guevara Hernández. Yo soy la Program Director de la Residencia de Medicina Interna. Soy hospitalista, enseño residentes de medicina interna y estudiantes de medicina de la Universidad de Des Moines.
Okay. Dr. Marquez?
Yeah, so discúlpeme. Soy Diego Marquez, soy un residente doctor en Mercy de medicina familiar. Y ahora me voy a entrar en otra residencia de emergencia.
¿De emergencia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bueno.
Okay, me llamo Arthur Junqueira Braga dos Santos. Yo soy un estudiante de medicina at Des Moines University, especializando en pediatric medicine, que es el estudio de la pierna, los pies, la rodilla, todo eso. Y antes de eso, yo fui cientista, tengo diplomas en ciencia biomédica y ciencias de la salud.
Okay. And you guys just met each other. You met him just now.
She's a mentor of mine.
Your mentor. Okay. You just met them.
I met them too.
Okay.
I met Dr. Guevara before.
Okay.
Yeah. She's my mentor too.
So, how big is the Latino medical community here in Des Moines? Is this it? Is
it's about 3% only.
3% here
in Iowa.
In Iowa, okay.
And the Latino population per the 2020 census data is 7%.
7%.
So we are underrepresented.
Right. And that's kind of the purpose of this Latino Heritage Month, second annual National Latino Physician Day.
Correct. That started in California.
Uh-huh.
Over there, they have about 20% of Latino population, and only 6% is Latino, and only 2.7% is Latina. So it's women physician from Latino origin. So last year, they started the first National Latino Physician Day with the idea of raise awareness and help people that they can do this, and not only Latino, but all minorities, because the importance is to have in the physician workforce the representation of our population, so patients feel identified and understood when they go to the physician.
Right. And Dr. Alarcon, you've been practicing for how long?
So practicing medicine for about 15 years.
15 years.
When I know we were talking about this before, when I came to Iowa, maybe 25 years ago, and
Right.
I don't have we have some stories though, but I was first working in on the Walmart stores in the South Side, and I was probably the only Spanish speaking there 25 years ago. So I can tell that the Latino population, the Spanish speaking population, has tremendously increased in the last 20 years, and I think it's meant to continue to increase.
Were you working at Walmart while you were going to medical school, or?
So I finished med school in Lima, Peru,
Oh, okay, I see.
South America. So and then we had to go to a transition to pass boards and certifications.
Oh,
So
okay,
during
okay.
that time, I was just stocking shelves at Walmart,
Wow.
and until I passed those boards.
How long did that take you to go?
It took me a
Transition.
good 3 years probably.
Wow.
Yeah. So I came from doing surgeries in my country, and then I was stocking shelves, which I thought was still was challenging though, because my English wasn't good enough. And,
Right.
And so that for me it was the perfect situation, because in the mornings I was going to Des Moines Area Community College to study English, and then in the evenings I was working at Walmart, and I was kind of practicing the English. I studied in the morning.
Right.
So in I think 7-8 months I got the English down, and I was able to.
So was there any other doctors, any other Latino doctors at that time, or?
I think what is a good a group of friends that we meet, through the time, that they in different states, that they have done similar. They have had similar journeys, to one way or another, to go through the process of learning the language, passing the boards, and getting into the medical system.
Right. So this organization or this Physician Day, the purpose of it is to create a community around. So then students, people want to enter this field more.
Exactly. That's what we want, to raise awareness since elementary school, high school. So kids that are underrepresented feel that it's not an impossible dream, that they can do it. And there is a group of Latino physicians that are willing to mentor them and tutor them to achieve their dream.
Right. So as far as your experience, tell me a little bit about how you entered the field and your experience.
Well, I'm from Caracas, Venezuela. I always knew I wanted to be a physician and help people, and especially in the times of need. I wanted to advance my education and come to United States to study here. So we first came with my husband to Phoenix, Arizona. We lived there, and that helped me study for my boards and also practice the language. Then we moved to Philadelphia, where I did my residency program at Jefferson University, Albert Einstein Medical Center, and then we came to Des Moines, Iowa. And it was a nice surprise to find a community of Latinos and make it feel like home.
Right.
And also having the happy face of the patient when I enter the room. I mostly work in the hospital, and when they can communicate in Spanish and express their need in Spanish, that is priceless.
So when you go from Caracas to Philadelphia, is the Latino medical community there, is it robust or is it also lacking? How about compared to Iowa?
It's higher than Iowa.
Okay.
But in general, the numbers are about 6 to 7%. So we are still underrepresented, and that's what we want to definitely get this message to the community, because representation matters.
Yeah, so this is like a marathon type of thing, right? Like it's just an annual or constantly making the awareness that there is a community and that people can reach out and get some guidance. Or how about you, Dr. Marquez? What was your experience? Tell us a little bit about your experience as a Latino doctor here.
Oh man. So my story is a little different. I'm a third generation Latino. I'm from Chicago. My dad's also an ER physician. So that was a big part of why I wanted to go into medicine. Unfortunately, my parents got divorced, so I had limited contact with my dad. But I talked to my African American classmates, because when you get into med school, the first thing you do is Latino, or as a black student. You show up the first day and you look and you're
right.
Like, who else is
who else is here?
Who else is out here? And there's everyone kind of gives each other the nod, okay, because there's probably 80 you in a class of 180.
Yeah, one of these
Yeah. And you all kind of just gravitate together in the anatomy lab, and next thing you know, your friends are surgeons, anesthesiologists, whatever. Mm-hmm. But you go to 4 years of brutality, but I think the real fight is getting to that place. Because I think both my black friends and myself, growing up in this country, being brown or being black, you're reminded that you're different. Since I don't know, second grade, I just remember one time I lived in South Bend, Indiana for a little bit, and some kids was calling me taco breath, and all kinds. I could go all day. All the stuff that I was called back then. I didn't even know what it meant. Right. I was too young to even know. Yeah. So that does do something to you. I'm 36 now. I'm a little older. I got into medicine late, and part of the reason I got into medicine late is because even with a dad as a doctor, you get fooled into thinking that you don't belong here. And it's seeing someone else who looks like you, speaks like you, and patients. Even I'm not fully bilingual. I grew up speaking Spanish, but my parents were afraid that I wouldn't catch on to school as quick as I should.
Okay.
But I can understand a lot more than I can speak. And just the cultural nuances and everything, just walking in, fast forward 20-something years later as a surgical resident, a patient's going in for surgery, no one is taking the time to explain the procedure to this patient. Even in my limited Spanish, I provide more insight. There's more cultural nuances, just the empathy. I'm not going to say that people don't care about brown patients, but I notice I'm taking my time with these patients, and I'm looking out for them sometimes, and just showing up with a face.
Yeah, I think on our Zoom call, Dr. Guevara, we spoke a little bit about the cultural aspect of a lot of Latin America. Well, at least I'm from Guatemala, so Vicks, ponte Vicks Vaporú, and so even that little nuance, like you mentioned, our skin color, there's a relativity, aspect or comfortableness that happens when you see somebody walking in the door and they're speak Spanish.
And it's important to recognize that, because validate those feelings that that you can use your big Vaporú or drink your hot soup, but also you need to take these medications, increase the trust and increase that relationship-centered communication with patients. So the evidence have shown that when the physician looks like you have this inherited trust, and when those cultural nuances are also part of the conversation, and you validate those feelings instead of saying, "Oh no, what's big Vaporú? Don't use that." You are dismissing the patient and then decreasing the trust, and at the end of the day, you want them to follow your guidelines. They are the experts in their health. We are the experts in medicine. So together we build a team.
Right.
And that's what it's so important to have that representation in the physician workforce that mirrors the population.
And jumping on what Dr. Guevara said about that is, some of these things, my mom put Vicks Vaporub on me, and I grew, these are things that our families have been doing for generations. So just because a doctor comes in, and I think definitely being an appearance has a part in it. But regardless of how they look, if they just shut down and they don't validate, as Dr. Guevara was saying, the chance of that patient doing the same thing and then not telling you about it is still very large.
Right.
And that can cause problems because it's been shown. I mean, herbal supplements can affect the efficacy of medications. You know, taking soups and certain things before surgeries, you're not supposed to eat. You're not supposed to be on certain diets. And so if you're able to say, hey, you know, I remember when my mom did it. I remember my tias told me to do this. But to tell them why they can't. It gives them, I remember my mom, so I have a unique experience because I was the immigrant son. I moved here when I was 4 years old from Brazil. And I had to translate for my mom. So I was the son that had to go to that I spoke English because we went to school. And my mom, I was very blessed that she learned the language very quickly, and so did my dad. But I remember having to do those things for them. And you don't understand the lack of validation sometimes, and that plays a huge factor in it as well, is being able to say, no, this person understands why I'm doing it. They're showing me a better way.
Right. And your experience is, you're Brazilian, you said, and so tell us a little bit about how that, you've had some Mexico experiences.
So I was born in Brazil, and I moved here when I was 4. My dad got an opportunity to go to school here, and he moved us from, I come from a rural part of Brazil. I come from a state called Goiás. It's one of the largest meat exporters in the world, actually. It's a lot of cow farms, a lot of actually corn. I say I moved to the Brazilian equivalent of Iowa, now here to Iowa. As we were driving up from Florida, my dad's like, I know this is corn, this is soy, I remember all this, you know. However, with that being said, it was definitely a huge culture shock. And it's funny because moving from Florida to Iowa, it was like a culture shock over again, because I come from a place where we have an abundance of different Latino communities, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Mexico, and obviously a large Brazilian population, to here where there seems to be a large Mexican population that I've seen. And again, I've only been here for a year, whereas other communities, it's pockets that you need to find. And as you said, I have some experience in Mexico. I worked for years, and my dad still works in and out of Mexico, and I was able to be blessed to go to the country several times and work with some amazing people over there. So growing up, I always spoke Portuguese as my first language, picked up English, and then as I was in high school and I was going to college, I studied La Real Academia. I had a wonderful Boricua teacher. She always had her sweater, and she always told everybody exactly what their place was. And I love you, Miss Mejia. And to this day, she's a phenomenal supporter. But, you know, it's Dr. Guevara mentioned in her experience in Philadelphia, you find mentors, and Dr. Alarcon mentioned mentors in other states. You always have that one person who can show you a path. You know, Dr. Salas is the chief diversity officer at DMU, where I'm at now. I'm a student there, podiatric medical student there, as I mentioned. And he goes around and he speaks to various students. He acts almost as a I don't want to say father figure because I love you, Dad. It's your birthday today, but you know, as a tío to all of us, and shows us different paths. And he goes and speaks around the country, and showing students that there's other paths even beyond medicine, but advancement in STEM. You know, myself, I did a couple of different things. Dr. Salas has his advancement in STEM, and so we try and promote that and be those types of mentors. Like Dr. Mejia, she was the abuela for the whole school. And you have those people even outside of medicine, just in academia in general, showing you, hey, just because you don't know how things work doesn't mean there's not another path.
Right.
I mean, there's 3 different ways for you to become a surgeon in the United States. You can do DO, DPM, or MD. And that's nowhere else in the world does that happen. So just because one door closes doesn't mean there's not somebody who can show you through another door.
Right.
But it's a community thing. I mean, to tell my mom that I wanted to be a DPM, she's like, but you'll still be a doctor, right? You know, and because it's so different. And those are the things that we want to try and highlight, is that there are other paths to being a physician, to being in academia. And when we say 2%, 2% is an insane number when you think about it. With 1 million practicing physicians in the United States, if we can increase Latino physicians just by 2%, that's almost 100 million patient visits a year, because we're estimating 20,000 more physicians with around 400 patient visits a month. That's 96 million more patient visits being seen by a Latino practitioner. So and that's just on estimates by CDC. It's a huge difference because 2% is small, but when we think of especially how overworked our medical system is, 2% of physicians, that's a lot of people seeing a lot of patients every day.
Right.
That's 20 patients almost every day. And I'm being a conservative estimate. These guys can probably tell you that it's a lot more than that. And that's why it's so important to be those beacons for.
And one of the missions of this movement, or this events that you guys are having, is to create those to celebrate the doctors and the ones that have already accomplished it, to say, hey, if you can, I can do it, you can also do it, from an elementary phase, like you said. But as you mentioned, Dr. Marquez, is it's even that confidence of even belonging, right? Like, gotta get over that part. And then it's having the confidence of of saying, I can do it. I dropped off my daughter a long time ago to elementary. It was a predominantly white, school here, East Polk Elementary. And I dropped her off, and the hallways were almost, kind of empty. And she goes off and walks away, and this little third grader's like, "I'm Mexican." He just points at me, and I just start laughing. I'm like, all right, I'm Guatemalan, but even in that early stage, there's so we had to move her out of that elementary, because it wasn't a fertile grounds for her. She was gonna feel intimidated, or her confidence was gonna be low. So that's one of the missions of this is to show and celebrate the accomplished doctors. So then there's they can see, like, oh, somebody like me did it. Can you speak on that a little bit, Dr.
Definitely. So
Alarcon?
it's to become a physician is a long path, but and maybe it's a little difficult path, but it's doable. It has steps, since you are in pre-med, med student, then a residency. But I think with the appropriate support and I think it's definitely more than doable. These days we see young kids and students that they get discouraged on those long careers, and maybe they choose something else just because being afraid of the long path to become a physician, to become a surgeon. But it's a process that you enjoyed every part of it. And it closes every time, and then it opens another one, and then you keep expanding onto that. Definitely, this day is to celebrate that those physicians that we were able to take the challenge to go all the way, and but also to encourage the young student, the young adult that is looking into a career to serve, to help other people. When I'm thinking about Latino physicians, and it's not only not necessarily the speak Spanish though, but it's also that when they talk about the culture. That we're talking about the using the creams and using this cultural remedies, and I think we that are growing up in Latino communities, Latino parents, we kind of hear this a lot from grandma, from the aunt, from everybody else, and we're able to understand them. In my practice, sometimes I see patients that the first thing is, I saw that doctor, a non-Spanish speaking, he doesn't know anything. And when I look at the note, well, he did all the right things, and he, it was a cold, just kind of conservative treatment, because he didn't do an X-ray or he didn't give him antibiotics. He was a bad doctor. So had to spend the first 5 minutes explaining, well, this is a correct treatment, and we don't want to expose you to radiation for no reason. We don't want to do this for that. Blah, blah. But you really had to break that, and you know what the Latino patient wants, and you're able to explain that better. I think as that are born in Latino family community, we see that on a day-to-day, though.
Right.
We're able to with the proper training, to explain that and try to.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some people that they have like a broken ankle, and like, you should go get it checked, and they're like, no, me van a sobar, so there's a big. I mean, it's funny because it's such a huge part of our heritage and our culture and stuff that you have to kind of be able to understand it and explain it a little bit more. Like, no, you should go check it out.
Funny thing, when my daughter twists her ankle, I usually agarro her ankle and I rub sana colita de rana, and she tells me that doesn't work. So then I put the ice and everything else up. But yeah, so they have those beliefs, and you have to, and that goes, hand to hand with the medication non-compliant. We see patients in, 2 or 3 medications for blood pressure, for diabetes, and still can't control it, and you just not taking it. And when you go one by one, and you take the time to go, you say, well, that one I take it because I don't think he knows, or I don't believe this, specialty, or I didn't understand, and I get to see many of the patients that get discharged from the hospitals, and sometimes from severe diseases, and they come with totally new medications, and it might take a week, 2 weeks before I see them after the hospital. They didn't take any of that. They didn't do any of that because they didn't trust the provider, and I needed to, say, yeah, you should take this, and you should continue with all stuff, but you also should take that stuff, should take the other.
So there is a trust between patient and doctor that has to be built, and when there's somebody that looks like you already kind of start trusting that person.
If I may, I think it's also similar stories. I think there's Latino culture in the United States, there's African American culture, there's German culture,
Right.
but there's also immigrant culture. Like a lot of the things we need to talk about is there needs to be a trust within the medical community for undocumented immigrants. Like we were talking before the podcast started about HIPAA, and we were actually making jokes about HIPAA and not being able to say, but it's a real thing. Health information privacy is a very serious thing.
Right.
And there needs to be trust that your doctor, your physician is going to treat you equally regardless of your immigration status. You see, I've had the privilege of working with some high schools here. There's a large Somalian population here. There's a large Asian population here. And, even though their cultures are undoubtedly different and undoubtedly have their own respective things, I'm not trying to compare Latino culture and theirs. The immigrant culture of being able to trust the community, I think, is really important. So when you hear, hey, my mom came here too, or I came here, or I know, don't worry, I think that goes a long way as well. And they can obviously speak more to that than I can.
Right. So
Absolutely.
So on September 23rd, just to kind of do some informational here, you guys going to be at the Latino Heritage Festival
Yes.
Yes.
with the DMU booth.
Yeah. So
tell us about that.
So as I mentioned before, I go to Des Moines University. We have 2 programs. We have our DO and our DPM program, and students from both from Latino and non-Latino backgrounds are going to be there.
Okay.
And they're going to be predominantly our second-year clinically medicine-trained students. So we'll be there with supervision of some physicians, and we'll be doing blood pressure checks. But we're also going to be doing some awareness, talking about the different opportunities that the university provides. The university actually has something really cool called the Health Pass program that they do over the summer that allows 10 to 15 undergraduate students every year to shadow physicians, see different classes and how those go. So we'll be talking about those programs, but we'll also be trying to do some community outreach and do some blood pressure checks and just talk about the different possibilities that we have and get the community involved in the programs that school are doing and see more Latino representation.
And then October 3rd, you'll be speaking with high school students.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
That's part of what we want to raise awareness, be there and explain them. Even though it seems daunting, there is a path
Yes,
that you can become a physician. And there is a group here, local, that can help you and can mentor you in that path. So that's what we want to start the pipeline early on.
Right.
Because we have been able to achieve this, but then how we can help the next generation to arrive where we are right now is to help them since they are very young.
Right. And then October 13th, also speaking with high school students from Avenue Scholars.
So there's a couple of different programs that both the university and obviously the members of Medical Students for Latino Health, which I'm a part of at DMU, we work with. And all of those are focused on what Dr. Guevara was talking about, is kind of showing, hey, there's a path, and if you have questions, we can show you the path. I remember personally when I was in middle school, we did one of those 10-year time capsules. And I put a note in saying, in 10 years, I'm going to be a practicing surgeon. And I was 13. Because in Brazil, it's 6 years. You go to medical school and you're done. Obviously, I'm 26, so that didn't happen yet. But it's doing things like that. It's saying, hey, we have similar stories. And, when you're young, you're optimistic. There's a lot of cartoons. Doc McStuffins is a great one for elementary school students talking about medicine. But once you start hitting middle school, high school, the realities of the world come at you and you start realizing how daunting, as they mentioned, it is. So our goal is to work both with From Starts right here and Avenue Scholars, which are two phenomenal programs that are here in Des Moines, and talk to some of their students, especially in the high school, and say, hey, whatever's happened so far, there's still a way out of it. And that's something I've learned from my experiences. Okay, you didn't do great in high school, go to community college, get a 4.0, transfer to another program, and start looking at programs in the United States that make what you want to do happen. And so that's our whole goal is showing those stories, or showing, hey, do you have family? It's a lot harder, but if you have family in another country and for whatever reason your immigration status, you need to go home, you can still come back, as we have two phenomenal physicians here showing those stories. You can go back to your home country, study, and use your experience to come back here if you need to.
Well, I want to jump back into your journey, Dr. Marquez, just to kind of, because you said that your journey was a little bit different. You started late. Can you tell a little bit about when you started and what took you to that decision?
So I kind of wanted to be a doctor. Just growing up where I went, it was kind of like backwards. My dad, I'm Puerto Rican and Mexican. My dad is a proud Puerto Rican. I won't be here the 23rd. I'll be in Chicago. Hopefully, I'll be eating jibarito tostones. But my parents got separated, and then my dad was kind of like this legend. I was like, "He's a doctor." Like,
yeah.
Okay. Everyone else is calling me saying that that's not real. You're a dirty Mexican. You're a landscaper. You're all this stuff. What are you going to do? For the purposes of, like, I don't know what the rating of this podcast is, but there are so many things that I've been called from the grade school, like you saw your daughter was, that I don't really, I kind of like phased out. That's why I said that there's an extra level of hate that you get exposed to growing up in this country as a Latino. And it does something, it probably does something to my DNA. I may not live as long as I should have had I grown up in another country, living here. I wasn't the best high school student. I was a varsity soccer player. I played D1 soccer. And then I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was a bio major just because I thought maybe I could do something with that. I wasn't a good high school student. I went to community college, like he said, transferred, played sports, and then kind of lost track of what I wanted to do. And then I graduated with like not a med school GPA, but a decent GPA, but not good enough to get into med school. I worked at T-Mobile for 2 years selling phones.
Okay.
And then I used that money to study for the MCAT by myself, because being in medicine takes medicine. First thing you do when you get into medical school, at least in this country, you'll notice half your classmates are rich.
Okay.
And they're Asian or white. This is how it is. It's not a knock against them. Some of them are nice. Most of them are nice, but a lot of them aren't. So it's hard when you don't have any backup. And I had to go through that whole circuit, took the MCAT over again, did so well that some schools were like, how is your GPA this and your MCAT's up here? What happened? What did you do? And then I did a master's in biotechnology. Fortunately, my mom was actually working at University of Illinois Chicago, where they have, so I didn't know this, my med school actually had the most Latinos in the entire country. Oh. More than like USC in California. That's like the other big feeder school of Latinos and doctors in the US.
Okay.
It makes sense, it's in California. But they had a office there called the Hispanic Center of Excellence. My mom was like one of the secretaries that worked in that office, and it basically laid out the blueprint of what you guys are doing, what's hopefully going to happen here. They had a pipeline program called Medicina Scholars for high school students. Then they had another thing for the medical students to pair you up with an attending like Dr. Guevara, and helped you get research and basically helped you navigate the match, because that's a whole nother level of just challenges that you have to get to. And then our dean had to advocate for us, because I guess initially we were under the umbrella of the Urban Health Program, which is another minority recruitment program primarily for African Americans. And I guess back in the 80s or 70s, they didn't think it was necessary to have a Latino one, just kind of one under the umbrella. And I didn't realize that my dad started that chapter in Chicago. So like I had a lot of expectation when I got there, but I got there late. And then I finally got into med school when I was 28, and I felt like all my friends were making money. Everyone was looking at me like I was silly.
At that time, you had an associate, a bachelor,
I
and
had
then
a master's in
master's.
biotechnology.
Okay.
And I had a bachelor's in biology.
Okay.
And I just came off working from T-Mobile, and I was just so happy to be there. I was listening to like Lil Wayne and Drake, and I was just like, all
Having
those
a good
songs
time.
spoke to me like, this is my time. And then I finally got in.
And med school is how many years?
It's 4 years.
4 years,
and
okay.
That was a whole nother, like I said, like the first day of class, you look at each other, and some of you guys gravitate towards each other, and then the real challenge begins, because then you're even your own professor. So were you born here? You speak so well. You're just lazy. All kinds of stuff that I don't even really want to go through, because that could be its own podcast.
Yes.
How to deal with racism in med school while being a Latino.
Yeah, we'll have to put that one on.
that could be a whole series, like a 10-part series.
Yes.
And then luckily I had that office. They paired us up with mentors, and we're like, we had monthly and weekly meetings where we would literally just like meet with an attending who said, what did you go through this week?
Okay.
You're okay. You're still here. Keep going. Like, do this or do that. Or they would pair us up with like an older med student. So, because it's kind of like high school, it's 4 years. A freshman with like a senior to kind of help you. And then you would show up the next day and just eat more of it and just be like, I'm ready. Like,
well, when you're talking right now, my niece, she's going to Iowa State right now, and when she was a senior or junior or something, we did a little mini documentary. Me and my daughter did a mini documentary. This is my daughter. About my mom, right? Her immigrant story. But part of the interview was, interviewing the grandkids, and part of the mini documentary, she says, "I want to be a doctor." And now I think she's in her junior year at Iowa State, and I think she's choosing to go like the route of like in sports, like the people that are with the sports team, and they go and they
physical therapy.
Physical therapy. But what you're saying is that once she's done with that, she can still go.
Oh yeah, that's a big misconception.
So it doesn't have to be like I'm deciding to be a doctor the first day that I'm in college.
I'm
100%. Yeah,
right.
I'm living.
And same. I got 2 degrees before, and I worked with timeshare sales before I got into it. So, I mean, I did business consulting, but a large part of that business consulting was timeshare sales. So it's definitely possible. And I have a similar story. Not a great GPA, did well on my MCAT, and people were like, "Why are you here?"
Yes.
And similar story. And I can relate. I remember lunchtime growing up was horrible because you're opening cafeteria. You're opening. Yeah, exactly. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. So if you've ever had a packed lunch and you're from a Latino family, you're gonna throw that in the microwave and everybody's gonna hate you. I begged I don't even like cold cuts. I begged my mom for Lunchables, and we didn't have the money for it, so I kept opening. So yeah, so similar. So like we said, it's a matter of culture. I have a saying that I like to say. I think color is important, but when we're talking about this, it's a matter of culture, not color, because no matter how you look, how you're from, it's our stories that unite us together. But what you were talking about, it's absolutely possible. We have we have students currently in the DPM program who joined medical school at 56. We have students who are med sales representatives. We have students who have doctorates in pharmacy. We have students who have PhDs. There are a million different routes to get into medical school. And advisors do a wonderful job at telling you that's not true. It's difficult. I'm going to give some credit to advisors here because it's difficult. The admissions process to even undergraduate universities in the United States is confusing, much less to a grad program where they look at so many different variables. So always keep pushing. If it's something you want, I always say this. There's people who are deans of faculties of medicine today, and it took them 4 or 5 times. There are people, myself included, who have failed classes in grad school, and they have to retake it, and that's okay. The thing is, you can never let anybody else tell you to quit. If you're telling yourself this isn't something I love, then I say that is the day that you should stop. Because this is not a road or a path for the faint of heart. Especially as an immigrant, as a Latino, it's not easy. But don't let somebody else tell you to quit. The day your heart tells you to quit, go find something you love. But until then, keep pushing.
like
And-
to add to. Oh, go ahead, please. You go ahead.
So you need to believe. That's
Right.
the most important
Uh-huh.
thing. As a program director, I had the pleasure to interview a lot of medical students applying for an internal medicine residency.
Uh-huh.
And I value a lot of the growth mindset. I value a lot of experience before med school because those residents are actually my stellar residents, are the ones
Okay.
that connect with my patients because they understand the hardships of life and they understand what my patients had gone through, and they are not completely, unrelated to social determinants of health and all that kind of things. And that experience actually teaches my other residents that were blessed in life that didn't have to go through it.
Yes,
But
yes, yes.
it's a good mixture of a group where everybody complements each other and learn from each other. So definitely the growth mindset is a new learning pathways. Like a lot of the deans and program directors out there are value. It's a very valuable skill.
Right. To like have a belief in yourself.
And that's
like
the most important thing, having the drive and belief in yourself.
What did you?
I think so. I think we're in different examples. We're talking about one of the biggest misconceptions of the young students. The misconception is that that you need to be an A-plus student through all your life to be able to get into med school. That's what we're talking about, and that is not true.
Right.
A great, and I want to summarize it, a great physician, a Latino physician, that it was my mentor and mentor of many physicians in Iowa, Dr. Jose Angel. I think some of you guys know him. He told me recently, and of course he's, teaching, being a mentor of many students and physicians, told me that I rather have a student with an B brain and an A energy than the other way around.
Right.
Those are the students that that they continually pursue, and that's I think a little bit of what we are talking about. That you continue your dreams and continue to pursue it, despite not necessarily you are always testing well. They are not always getting the 100% scores on the, or don't have the best GPA. I think that's my case too. I never had the best GPA. Anyways, I think that statement says a lot in medicine.
Yes.
You rather want a student with B brain and an A plus energy.
You can teach school, but you can't teach people to like care and believe and have that drive.
Yeah, I think one of the other things to say is like the experiences that we get like make us stronger. Like the life experiences, like just even sports, going through that struggle. I've had residents that are supposed to be smarter than me freeze when patients crash, and I'm like, what are you doing, bro? Get out the way.
Yeah.
And then I'm the one cleaning up the mess, and I'm like, I don't know if it's because like I had to take a penalty kick like 10 years ago in my life that won a game, or it's because I had to work at T-Mobile and make rent. I don't know, but like those experiences make you stronger.
Scrappiness.
And they give you the confidence to work under stressful situations, and those experiences are kind of underrated, but they help you as a doctor stay composed under pressure because that's what everyone wants.
And, I want to jump on that really quick. When we're children, a lot of those experiences feel like we did something wrong, especially as an immigrant here. When your dad leaves a note for your mom and says, hey, if I don't make it back from the immigration office, should they just go home? Or when you worry because you confuse a word and it chokes you up when you're presenting in class, or any of those little things that the people listening who have these backgrounds will understand what I'm saying, we blame ourselves for them, and it makes us feel less perfect. And I know I did that for many, many years, where I would say, oh, I wish I had a friend, his name was Ben. I wish I could do this like Ben, or Ben's dad does this. And actually, funny enough, Ben's dad is a phenomenal physician from Guayaquil, Ecuador. But his mom was from Ligonier, Pennsylvania, and he had, he was a white passing individual as well. And other students, Christian, I just remember these kids, and I'm like, I wish I could be like that. But now the experiences I had that made me sometimes mature a little sooner and made me oftentimes feel less than are what allows me to be more. And so that's something I always tell when I meet younger students and try and help them out is what you're going through now that feels that makes you less is actually something that if you get through this is going to make you more.
Right.
And
It'll
I think
turn
that's
around and become an asset.
100% because you survived it. I mean, anybody who can come through the other side of anything, whether it's taking a penalty kick, whether it's having to go and explain why your chest smells like menthol when you when you got a cold.
Yeah.
And you're not sweating, your shirt just sticking to you.
Yeah.
But all those little things, having to go through that is exposing you to things that, okay, maybe you weren't ready to be exposed for, but you're going to be exposed to them at some point. And I would much rather it be, like he said, exposed early than when a patient is coding or crashing or, you know, the first time you see a vehicle collision. I remember the first time I was in an accident and was CPR certified and decided to help. And that calmness under control because you've been living in that chaos your whole life.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Right.
If you can survive that chaos, but don't let it bring you down.
Right. And I appreciate what you said about, you know, preferring somebody with B grades, but with a B brain and A. Yeah. And the way to build that is by giving the confidence from the very beginning, right? And which is this part of the, with this program that you guys have, or this movement that you guys are behind.
I'm part of that meeting that we want to have on October 1st in El Fogón. And thank you for that amazing restaurant to sponsor us. It's also explained that as a physician, you are going to have a debt, education debt, but there are ways to pay that off. There are physicians' loan repayment programs. There are ways that you can then pay off that debt because a lot of the Latino community will feel like, well, this is great, everything you're telling me, but I don't have the means to afford.
When both of my parents are working hard just to get us through, how can I even think about medical school or like go that path?
But there are pathways that you can go, scholarships, but also after you assume that debt, you can enter in a physician loan repayment program and pay off that debt.
So at on October 1st, is this open to the public?
It is.
Right, open to the public at El Fogón on Mill Civic Parkway in West Glen, West Des Moines, 5465 Mill Civic Parkway from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Yes, and we also want to acknowledge all our sponsors because any of these wouldn't be possible without their help and support.
Right.
So El Fogón, Des Moines University, Latina Leadership Initiative, Latino Trade Network, and Mercy One.
Okay, excellent. And from 5 to 8, there's going to be, tell us about that day. Is there going to be a panel? Is it just going to be tell us a little bit about that.
It's about getting together. So we are going to have food, drinks. Drinks are paid by
yourself, yeah.
Yes.
They're not free
but
drink.
at least food.
Yes.
It's going to be served. And then Dr. Alarcon, Dr. Garza, Dr. Carrion, Dr. Salas, and myself are going to be there. We each are going to take turns just telling our stories, giving a few words, but it's more about connecting and making sure we are reaching the community. So it's very informal. We're going to have some opening words and then some middle words and then at the end some closing statement.
Okay.
But it's very flux.
Okay. And there also Guitarras ATM.
Oh yes, Guitarras ATM is going to play. I'm looking forward to hear them. Yes, they are an amazing group.
Yeah, they're very happening. So what's like the last word of advice that you would give to somebody like my niece, for example, that, you know, I think she wants to marry a professional athlete. Like that's what she told me. But no, it's a joke. But she did say it. But, you know, when she was a sophomore, we did that documentary, and I should show her because she's like, I want to be a doctor. And she said it very confidently. That path that she's taking out, that doesn't mean that that's it, right? Like she could go. So what would you tell to somebody like my niece
Well, I would like to finish. This has been a great meeting, and I'm happy to hear that everybody's stories and how everybody contributes to this day, to the National Latino Physician Day, and hopefully continues to grow.
Right.
We want to reach those students, those young students or parents that they are kind of on the fence, that they don't know if they should get into this, and hopefully we can reach some of them to increase this the Latino workforce. I would like to let's finish up with that statement that I think the misconception that you need to be a brilliant student all through your career, through high school to mid school. There's different paths to get there. And you can choose different careers and then switch and then get into mid school and use the credits you earned. But at any time of your life, I think if you think you trust in yourself and you can do it, you should move forward and get into med school. You don't have to feel yourself down because your GPAs wasn't the highest, or because you didn't follow the typical formal path of
That is true. Like you think of doctors like, oh, they're probably straight A students through the entire life. So that's really good advice.
It's the desire to also to treat people, and I would like my kids to all to be into med school. So my first one has already agreed to do that. He's 15 years old, and but every time I ask physicians, I see like my daughter or my kids get sick, and we have to get some stitches, and say, would you like to do that for somebody else? My daughter says that she would like to be the doctor for animals, so she wants to be better. But she likes now the dog we have. But that feeling that you have when you treat somebody and make him feel better, and then comes back later on better, and you did it through your study, to your training. It has no comparison with any other profession.
Rewarding. It's very rewarding. What about you? What would you tell a young student or a young person?
I would tell them to believe in yourself, believe you can do it, find a mentor. That's important. Find somebody to help you in the process, to guide you. And that's okay if your path is not straight. The important thing is to always have that goal in your mind and achieve that goal. And every morning wake up and what do I need to do to reach my goal? And it's okay if it's not a straight path. You can go so many different ways, but all those experiences are going to be beneficial for you, are going to make you a better person, a better physician, to serve your patients. And I will say that medicine is the best profession in the world. You get paid to help people, to save lives. And at the end of the day, even if you're exhausted, you can go to bed knowing that you most likely made the difference in somebody's life, and that's priceless.
Right. What about you, Dr. Marquez?
I would just tell high school students, undergrads, that it's definitely possible to keep leveling up. I remember freaking out over gen chemistry, and now I'm studying for boards. It just happens. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's a slow build up, and before you know it, you're ready to tackle and keep up with the people that you thought could topple you academically. It just happens. But you have to be prepared to put in the work. There's no way around it. I had to stop going out. I had to stop hanging out with certain people. I had to work out more. I had to do what I needed to do to get there. Because I'm not perfect, but there's no way to finesse getting into medicine in the U.S. You still have to show up.
Yeah.
And we all showed up on those exams, and you have to get out of I'm not good at test taking. Oh no.
Right.
No,
right.
you gotta get used to it.
Right.
You gotta show up there and just get beat up and come back and like that Captain America, or I could do this all day, where he's
right. Yeah.
You gotta get that mentality, and you're gonna get it from all kinds of ends. You're gonna get it from classmates. You're gonna get it from teachers. You're gonna get it from your own people, your own family. You're gonna get it from other minorities. You're gonna get it from white people. That's enough said, but you have to find a mentor and just keep going through it, because it's just gonna be like Die Hard. You're just gonna have to figure out a way. Like I like Spider-Man. Talk about those. I don't know if anyone's seen the new one, the canon events. when a tragic event happens, they call it a
yes,
canon event.
yes. That's right. Yeah.
Like there's canon events, and those are there for a reason. Like I think I had a tryout with the Chicago Fire Reserves. I almost made it to the MLS, but I had a stress fracture in my foot. And my mom, I went home crying, and she told me, all right, you got really close to going pro. What's your backup plan? And here I am.
Yeah. So
it's a canon
explain
event.
that again about the canon events. I did see the Spider-Man, but it's something happens, and then what happens?
So like when Peter Parker's uncle dies, that's what makes him become Spider-Man. It's a tragic event, but it changes your life for the good.
Yes.
There are a lot of canon events in life. Like
right, in our lives.
Getting a stress fracture, going down from the Chicago Reserves to the U-23. And I think had that not happened, I just would have been a dumb jock. I would have, not that, but like I always thought I was the dumb jock because in my family people were smart, and I was the dumb jock in high school, and now I'm like the jock doctor. So,
Right.
so things happen.
Right.
And I lost friends. My grandma died. That was probably the biggest thing. She died while I was in a resident, but she had a stroke when I was a little ER tech in the ER. That was like my first job in the hospital, just pushing beds. And I came back from work. I saw all these people having strokes. I came back, and my grandma was pushing a chair to move, and my aunt was there. And I was like, Theo, what's up? And she's like, oh, grandma can't walk. She's dizzy. And I'm like, did she fall? No. And then I did a little Romberg on her and some other stuff. And I was like, I wasn't even a doctor then. I was like, I think this is a stroke. And she was a lawyer. And she's like, you're not a doctor. Get out of here. Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, I'm going to call 911. I don't care what you think. She's yelling at me. I'm calling 911. We took her to the hospital. She had a stroke. And that then from there made me think that, you know what, one, I don't ever want to feel that way again, like being so scared for my family. And if I could be the other person on the other side taking care of the other version of me, another family, just being able to provide that comfort and that intervention myself. That was probably the biggest event, but they call them the canon events.
Yeah,
those
so life will come. You just got to keep trucking.
Yeah, and it may seem horrible at the time, but it actually might be the thing that changes you for the good. Like, I might have just been some bench warmer on the fire or something.
Right. So, what about you, Arthur?
Well, I want to hop on that as well. There was a statistic, I think it was from AMA that came out not too long ago, which is the American Medical Association. Something around a third of medical students are depressed. And nowadays with social media, you see a lot of the dawn of the medical influencer saying, oh, I get a coffee at 5 a.m. and then I go on a 3-mile run and then I can get through all 2,000 Anki cards by 7 and watch my TV show and go to sleep. That's not true. And maybe for 1%, I'm not going to say you don't do that, but the reality is this is hard. This is hard. You need to love it. And, Grey's Anatomy is great, but it's not real. And so one of the biggest things I always tell people, do this for you. If you're doing anything for you, and I think that's hard because, traditionally people view Latino and South American communities as individualistic. I disagree. I think it's one of the most collectivistic communities in the world because we do anything for our families. Do things for you, though, because if you take care of yourself, then you can take care of your family. And I'm a huge proponent on that. And that's the same thing with medicine. If you're doing this for you, then like Dr. Marquez has said multiple times today, eat it and keep going.
Yeah.
And you'll have to eat it. But if you keep going, you'll be able to make it to the other side. And Dr. Marquez also mentioned something earlier about it takes medicine to make medicine. And that's in large part true. You need touches to the medical community and to be able to get in there. And, students will watch this and say, well, you guys already made it, or, you had this connection or you had this connection. You can too. I mentioned several programs that DMU does every year, Health Pass included, the different outreach programs that we do. And I say look for those because while other communities do gatekeep, it's notorious that they gatekeep resources to prevent people like us from coming in. Our community is different. We want that 2%.
Right.
So reach out to us. Reach out even if you're at your doctor's visit. And I've had this happen plenty of times when I was shadowing other physicians. One of the physicians I shadowed the longest was my pediatrician. And his nurse always joked with me, and that one day I'd take over. I ended up picking feet over kids, but, ask him.
Right.
And if you show, and he didn't know my grades, but I always tried to bring A+ energy, like Dr. Alarcon said, whenever I'd see him, be like, hey, Dr. Gilchrist, let me, when I finally make it to school, let me do this. When I make it to school, and, I got the opportunity to work with him, and it was a blessing. But do things like that, reach out. And so even if you're at your primary care and you have the luck that somebody in attending there or PA is Latino or an underrepresented minority, be like, hey, how did you do this? What can you do? Because you'll find more often than not with underrepresented minorities that they'll actually help you because we want to increase that population. It's different from other communities where they're like, no, my son wants to get in, so I'm not going to tell this little high schooler how to get in or this and that. And I'm not saying everybody's like that. I hate generalizations, but the truth is people like that exist, and it intimidates others. This community, it's culture, and we want to expand our culture. So give it a chance to be a part, to expand the culture, and give that a chance. Reach out to somebody, Dr. Marquez, again, mentioned the things he had at a University of Chicago. Even within your university, I was part of the Multicultural Student Center at the University of Central Florida. At DMU, we have Mentoring Our Leaders of Tomorrow. You'd be surprised the resources and the people that are willing to give their time to be there for you. Like, we all took out an hour of our day to be here to spread this message.
Right.
I would happily take out 30 minutes of my day if a high schooler or a pre-med student emailed me and was like, hey, could you get on a Zoom to talk about this?
Yeah.
By no means am I an authority on anything. I'm looking at the camera and telling you right now I don't know anything. But I can always tell you my story.
Yeah.
I will happily tell you my story and the stories of others who helped me get there.
Right. It's all about asking too, right? Like, let's find out, because there are some resources and some paths, and that's what you're doing with this, is like showcasing and celebrating the achieved doctors to show you can do it, and there's ways of doing it. So hopefully out of this, I'm sure you're gonna inspire other young Latinos and Latinas, Latinx people to go on this journey, because I'm sure, like my niece, at that freshman, 8th grade, 9th grade, they're like, I could be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. And like you said, you don't have to be an A student throughout your entire life to get there. It's a rough terrain, but you can get there.
And it's not all negative. Like, I'm still a resident. Like, I do something called moonlighting, and like, you are gonna look stupid for a while, because I'm just being transparent, because you're gonna be in school longer than all your other peers or your family members, and they're gonna be like, what are you doing? Because that's haciendo. Like, you'll make no money. My other siblings, like, you can't help mom.
Yeah.
That was like 3 years ago. Now I pay for the family phone bill. I pay for help my mom's rent. I paid her car. Like, you actually, like, you get paid back. It's real. Like, it's a real job that pays very well.
Very well.
And it's like recession proof. So there's a gold at the end of the thing.
Yeah, yes.
It's there.
Just light at the end of the tunnel.
Put that there for people there, because that's a big,
Yeah, finances are a big thing.
Yeah, and it's there. I know, because I was worried about that too.
Yeah.
So,
well, unless you guys have any final words that you want to add, Doctor. Please come. So
October 1st.
October 1st, come to El Fogon, Mill Civic, West Des Moines. We'll be there. It should be a pretty nice event.
Yes.
And well, I would like to thank you all for doing this. We'll do our best to spread the word as much as possible. And hopefully it's not the last time that you come and talk. Maybe we could do one just about the So thank you again. Thank you for coming, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates and central Iowa companies.